Let's start today's class. We were talking about definitions under Income Tax Act. Now the next definition that is very important, assessee. This word is used more than thousands of times under Income Tax Act. Assessee, assessee, assessee. So whatever provision, whatever rule, whatever thing, whatever regulation applies in income tax, that applies to assessee only. Whenever we say assessee, what does it mean? Assessee is a person. So before moving to the next line, who is person? So person means individual, HUF, company, partnership firm, AOP, BOI, local authority, artificial judicial person. These are the persons. So not every person is assessee. Assessee is a person by whom any tax or any sum of money is payable under this act. So every person is an assessee provided he has a liability under Income Tax Act. For example, you are a person. Mr. Vishal, Ms. Dipanjali, you are a person. But you are not an assessee because you are not earning. Since you are not earning, you don't have any income tax payable under Income Tax Act. You are not assessee. You are just a person. So there's a difference in person and assessee under Income Tax Act. Assessee is a person by whom any tax or any sum is payable under this act. Now let me take another example. Ms. Dipanjali and Ms. Vishal, you got a notice from Income Tax Department that you need to reply. And there is one line written in that notice. If you don't reply to this notice within 7 days, you will be liable for a penalty of 5,000 rupees. Now, since you are not earning anything, you are not liable to pay any tax, but you are liable to respond to notice. But you did not respond. Now you are liable to pay 5,000 under Income Tax Act. Now you are an assessee. So it does not necessary that if you are not earning, income tax does not apply to you. You don't need to reply any notice. No, you have to reply at least. Maybe you don't need to pay any tax because you have not earned any money. So earning money is not a condition. The condition is paying tax. Suppose you are earning money just 1 lakh rupees. There is no tax on 1 lakh rupees. No tax is payable from your side. You are not an assessee. So that is the difference between person and assessee under Income Tax Act. And this also includes deemed assessee. So in some provisions of Income Tax Act, it is said that even if you are not an assessee, you will be deemed to be an assessee. If I talk in Hindi, it simply means हर वो पर्सन जिसको इनकम टैक्स विभाग को कोई भी पैसा देना है वो असेसी है। इसमें वो भी शामिल है जो असेसी नहीं है लेकिन उसको मान लिया गया है कि वो असेसी है, ये असेसी है। So this is the definition of assessee. Now what is the definition of income under Income Tax Act? So income under 5 heads under income tax: salary, house property, business or profession, and capital gain. जो बच गया वो सब other source. So whatever is salary will come under salary. Whatever is house property will come under house property. Whatever is business will come under business. And whatever is gain from sale of properties will go under capital gains. And whatever is not out of all these four will go under other source. Meaning thereby you cannot escape it from income tax. जो चारों में नहीं आता वो पांचवें में तो आ ही जाएगा। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आप रोड पर जा रहे थे और रास्ते में आपको एक 500 रुपए का नोट पड़ा हुआ मिला। दैट इज नॉट योर सैलरी, दैट इज नॉट इवन योर रेंटल फ्रॉम हाउस प्रॉपर्टी, दैट इज नन ऑफ योर बिजनेस to get money from the road, and you have not sold any property, so there is no capital gain. What is that? Other sources. तो रोड पर अगर 500 का नोट मिला है तो ये मत समझना कि ये आपका है, उसमें से 30% इनकम टैक्स का भी है। तो नेक्स्ट टाइम अगर ऐसा कभी आपके साथ कोइंसिडेंस हो, इनकम टैक्स इज वाचिंग यू। Now, how to calculate income tax? So, income tax may be from one or multiple heads. So, income may be from salary, house property, business, capital gain, other source, any head or maybe multiple heads. There are deductions as well. So, pehle we have to add all the incomes of all 5 heads. Then we have to deduct whatever deductions are applicable for the income. After whatever net income comes, we have to pay the tax. So income is not just कि आपके बैंक में जो पैसा आ गया वही income है. Income not even just whatever you got in your cash or in bank account. Income is from these heads. There are certain rules that we have to follow and calculate. Then we have to deduct whatever expense you have done to earn the income. Then whatever net income comes after deductions, we have to pay tax on that. So this is how income tax is calculated. Now there may be situation that you earn the salary, but you sold the shares at a loss. मतलब शेयर में तो नुकसान हो गया और सैलरी में प्रॉफिट, या बिजनेस में प्रॉफिट हो गया, शेयर्स में नुकसान हो गया, नेट में आपके पास कुछ नहीं बचा. सो डोंट वरी, यू विल नॉट हैव टू पे एनी इनकम टैक्स बिकॉज आपकी बिजनेस इनकम एंड लॉस फ्रॉम कैपिटल गेन कैन बी सेट ऑफ सब्जेक्ट टू सर्टेन रूल्स एंड कंडीशंस, बट कैन बी सेट ऑफ. आपको नेट इनकम पर ही टैक्स देना है. So income and losses can be set off with each other with conditions. Income under heads is taxable after deducting all permissible deductions. आपको रोड पर 500 का नोट मिला, but for getting that 500 rupees in your pocket, you have to go by your own vehicle. You have to spend on petrol. and then only you could get that 500. So maybe 100 rupees petrol you have spent to earn that 500 rupees income, you can claim deduction of that income, of that 100 rupees. A very, very, very important topic. Residential status of an individual. One question to you all. So there are just 3 persons, Vishal, Dipanjali and Sujit. I have a question for you all 3. Whether income tax can be applied on Indians only or as well as every person of whole world. इनकम टैक्स किस किस पर लग सकता है? सिर्फ भारत देश के लोगों पर या पूरे विश्व के, पूरे संसार के सभी लोगों पर? To whom you can collect income tax? So all 3, please reply. If you are awake, if you are not sleeping. So Sujit has replied, Dipanjali and Vishal. Dipanjali seems typing, but Vishal seems sleeping. So Dipanjali seems typing very long answer. I just wanted a small reply. Only Indians or to the whole world? To whom would be income tax applied? This is a very important thing, very important question. And I'm trying to make you understand my concept. Because अगर आप इसको मगअप करने की कोशिश करेंगे, रट्टा मारेंगे, नहीं होगा. It's a very complex condition, very complex topic, residential status. We need to understand it by concept. So there are now 2 opinions, resident or deemed to be resident in India, and Dipanjali says both resident and non-resident in India. So again, Ms. Dipanjali, I have a cross question to you. I am a person who is born in US, brought up in US, earning in US, doing everything in US. I have never come to India. क्या मेरी इनकम पर इंडियन इनकम टैक्स लगेगा? Mr. Sujit, you can also reply. नहीं लगेगा. Then what would be the case? How to identify? Oh, Vishal has woke up. Good morning, Vishal. So my again question is why? क्यों नहीं लगेगा? Why on my income, when I'm born, brought up, earning, everything is in US, why on my income, Indian income tax is not applying? And then what could be the case, as Dipanjali you are saying, कि non-resident पर लगेगा, तो कैसे लगेगा? How on non-resident, Indian income tax would be applied. Because in my case, when I'm born, brought up and earning in US, I'm a non-resident, but you are saying Indian income tax would be applied. How? कैसे लगेगा? I think you have a right to speak as well. If you really want to speak, you can maybe unmute and speak. Otherwise, chat is also okay. Because this is very important topic. 90% people, students are still confused in this basic condition and additional condition.
हेलो
Yes,
सर। सर मैं ये कहता हूँ, जैसे आपने कहा ना कि मतलब अगर सब कुछ यूएसए में ही अगर उसका है और फिर भी मतलब इंडिया में मतलब टैक्स केस उसमें लगेगा, लाइक अगर यहाँ से कुछ होता है ना सर्विस वगैरह या मैनेजमेंट वगैरह हैंडल हो रहा हो तो उस केस में लगेगा आई थिंक।
Okay, so Vishal's opinion is that if there is a connection, maybe if something is earned from India, due to India, through India, then Indian income tax would be applied, otherwise not apply. So what is your opinion, Dipanjali and Sujit, that how this chronology would happen? One last opinion कि नॉन रेजिडेंट पर कब लगेगा और कैसे लगेगा? That is my whole question. So, Ms. Dipanjali. Okay, let me reply now.
सर दूसरा ऐसा भी हो सकता है, जैसे आप मान लो कि वहां से आप बाहर कंट्री से सप्लाई कर रहे हो अपना मैनेजमेंट या सर्विस इंडिया में, तो भी तो अगर पेमेंट जो करेगा वो तो आई थिंक काट के ही करेगा, है ना?
Okay, ठीक है. Let's move forward. My question, the next question about residential status. If I am born in India, brought up in US, now my parents are living in India, but I am living in US. I sometimes live in India, I sometimes live in US. I have a passport of US, but my parents have a passport of India. This is a complex condition of most NRIs of India. Like those people who are doing well settled business or something in other countries, just like Sundar Pichai, just like all other big Indians of US or UK, they all have their parents or grandparents having Indian passport or maybe living in India. हमारे नारायण मूर्ति जी के दामाद को ही ले लो. His father-in-law is having Indian passport, Indian business, everything Indian. Rishi Sunak, and he is having UK passport. He is living in UK. Now there might be cases who is living 50% time in India, 50% time in US. How would you decide? किस पर इनकम टैक्स लगेगा और किस पर नहीं? And another thing that may arise is my earning source. See, there are two conditions now. One is I'm living equally in India and equally in US. Now, whether income tax of India would apply me or not. Second, wherever I'm living, my income source is completely US based. मेरा इंडिया से कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है, ना मैं इंडिया से कुछ खरीदता हूं, ना मैं इंडिया को कुछ बेचता हूं. मैं सिर्फ यूएस से खरीदता हूं, यूएस में बेचता हूं, यूएस में ही रहता हूं. क्या मुझ पर इनकम टैक्स लगेगा? और द केस नंबर 2, आई एम डूइंग एवरीथिंग फ्रॉम इंडिया बट आई एम नॉट लिविंग इन इंडिया एट ऑल. मैं इंडिया कभी आया ही नहीं, बट माय एंटायर थिंग्स हैपेंस इन इंडिया. आई एम परचेजिंग फ्रॉम इंडिया, आई एम परचेजिंग, selling in India, everything I'm doing in India. Just like Apple CEO, Apple's thousands of mobiles are being sold in India and the earning is going to Apple, whether Apple has to pay Indian income tax or not. So there can be n number of cases. So I just, before going into the deep rules, I want to know your opinion. that what could be the rule, not case. I don't want a case number 1 or 2 answer. I want a simple answer from you all three of you, Vishal, Dipanjali, and Sujit. Tell me one thing. नॉन रेजिडेंट पर इनकम टैक्स कब और कैसे लगेगा? हाउ टू अप्लाई इनकम टैक्स ऑफ इंडिया ऑन अ नॉन रेजिडेंट? Looking into all these permutation and combinations. Don't go by the rules, just go by the heart. What your heart says. क्या आवाज आ रही है अंदर से, किस पर इनकम टैक्स लगेगा? So how, see, अगर मैं इंडिया में रह रहा हूं and I'm earning from India, I'm living in India, I'm doing everything in India. Naturally, I have to pay Indian income tax. There is no doubt about it. But I'm talking about non-resident, a person who is not living in India but earning from India, who is living in India but earning from US, who is 50% living in India, 50% earning in US, and earning also from both the countries. How to apply Indian income tax on a person who is not resident in India or who is a foreigner Indian? Tell me. Sujit, Dipanjali, and Vishal, what is your opinion?
टैक्स तो लगे, इनकम टैक्स तो लगेगा ही ना.
Vishal, can you be louder, a bit louder?
टैक्स तो लगेगा, टैक्स.
You mean to say Rishi Sunak, who is living, born, brought up, and even earning in UK only, he is just coming to India. Maybe अपने ससुर जी से मिलने आते होंगे वो साल में एक बार. So maybe to meet his in-laws, he is coming in India once or twice. Though he's an Indian, we say he's a proud Indian, but he comes in India once or twice in a year. Rest everything he's in UK only. Whether Rishi Sunak has to pay Indian income tax on his income or not.
इसमें कुछ कंडीशंस वगैरह होगा कि ऐसे तो मेरे हिसाब से.
Don't go by the condition. Just think about the situation. Logically, what do you think? Should he pay Indian income tax? Okay, now let's move forward. I'll reply all your doubts, all your queries, all the things. Just as Vishal said, that there must be some condition. कुछ तो होगा जिससे ये पता लगे कि किसको देना है किसको नहीं देना. So that is what we need to understand. Why these rules are made? Because it's very complex. It's very, very complex to make situations for foreigners easy. That who should pay Indian income tax and who not. So it's very simple answer is, अगर आप इंडिया के रिसोर्सेज को यूज कर रहे हो ना, आपको इंडियन इनकम टैक्स देना पड़ेगा. द थंब रूल इज that you need to understand logically is, if you are using Indian resources, अगर आप इंडिया की सड़कों पर चल रहे हो, अगर आप इंडिया की हवा पानी यूज ले रहे हो, अगर आप इंडिया में आकर के इंडियंस के थ्रू कमा रहे हो, मतलब इंडियन रिसोर्सेज आर इंडियन पीपल आल्सो. सो इफ यू आर अर्निंग, if you are doing anything but you are using Indian resources, you must pay Indian income tax, because Indian resources are not free. You cannot just use Indian resources and go in your country. No, never. If you are using our resources, you have to pay our income tax. If you are not using our resources, just do whatever you want to do. I hope this concept is very clear to you. If you are using Indian resources, you have to pay Indian income tax, because Indian resources are not free. भारत की सड़कों पर चल रहे हो लेकिन भारत का इनकम टैक्स नहीं देना चाहते, ये नहीं चलेगा. आप भारत मत आओ, don't come to India, don't earn through India, don't do anything related to India, then don't need to pay Indian income tax. But if you are coming to India, living in India, using Indian people, using Indian resources, you have to pay Indian income tax. That's the thumb rule. Now, there again has to be very clear rules. This is the concept. This is the logic. This is not the rule. This is the logic. Now, what is the rule? So, we will now talk about two things. Number one, resident. Now, how to define resident, then how to define earning. क्योंकि Indian income tax लगने के लिए there are two ways a person can use Indian resources. A person can use Indian natural resources by living in India. अगर आप इंडिया में रह रहे हो, यहाँ के हवा पानी सड़क जितने भी फ्री रिसोर्सेज हैं, you are using those resources by living in India. That means you are using Indian resources, you have to pay Indian income tax. Secondly, even if you are not living in India, but you are earning from the resources of India, maybe Indian people, Indian resources, Indian companies, or anything, then also, even if you are not living in India, you have to pay Indian income tax. Now we will talk about the first one, living in India. And that is known as residential status. That how much you are residing in India. That will decide whether you should pay income tax in India or not. So residential status of individual. Taxability would arise according to the residential status. There can be resident and non-resident. Those who are resident of India, they have to pay Indian income tax. Those who are non-resident in India, they need not pay any income tax. And resident can be of two types, ordinary and not ordinary. Ordinary resident has to pay more income tax. Not ordinary resident has to pay less income tax. We will talk about resident first. अगर आप एक साल में 182 दिन से ज्यादा इंडिया में रुके, you were in India for minimum 182 days. 365 days का एक year होता है. Out of that, 50% if you have stayed in India, that means you are using Indian resources. You are staying in India for more than 182 days. That means you are using Indian resources and you are a resident in India. You have to pay Indian income tax. Or you were in India for 60 days in last year. But previous 4 years, you were in India for minimum 365 days. मतलब ज्यादातर इंडिया में ही पाए जाते हो. 4 साल से हर साल 80-90 दिन 100 दिन तक आप इंडिया में थे. पिछले साल भी 60 दिन इंडिया में थे. भैया इंडिया के मजे ले रहे हो पूरे, तो इंडियन इनकम टैक्स तो देना पड़ेगा. Because you were in India for minimum 60 days in last year and you were in India for 4 years, minimum 365 days. Both conditions, if you are satisfying, that is equivalent. You are in India for 182 days. So if you are satisfying any one of these conditions, you are a resident in India, you have to pay Indian income tax. I hope this condition is clear. You are in India for more than 182 days in last year, or case number 2, you are in India for 60 days minimum in last year, and before that, previous 4 years, you were in India for minimum 365 days. Then you will be deemed to be resident in India. Now, be a case. Now let me take a hypothetical situation. आपने चार्टेड अकाउंटेंट का कोर्स किया and you are in India, you were born and brought up in India, you are living in India. On 1st of June 2023, you got a job in UK. आपने CA कंप्लीट किया and you got a job in UK on 1st of June and you went to UK for the job purpose. And you did not come back to India for next 1 year. Now for 23-24, this person will be resident or non-resident. Sujit, Abhay, Vishal and Dipanjali, please reply. I'm repeating the question. I was born, brought up and living in India. Now, on 1st June 2023, I got a job in UK and I shifted to UK permanently. I did not come back. Whether I will be resident in India or non-resident for the year 23-24. That means from April to March.
Sir,
1st June.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Sir, the presentation is not moving.
Sorry. What not moving?
The presentation. Only one slide we can see. It's not moving.
Not moving. But I think maybe let me share it again. This slide everyone can see because I've been talking about only one slide from last half an hour or something. Maybe that's the reason. Okay, let's continue. Sujit has replied resident. Abhay has replied not resident. And Dipanjali is still typing, I think. Can you please be fast? Non-resident. So Ms. Dipanjali and Abhay, why non-resident? He was in India for 60 days, or I would say 62 days for financial year 23-24. And as I told, he was in India from last 25-30 years. He never went to UK before. First time he went to UK. That means previous 4 years he was entirely in India. So he's satisfying the condition too. So as per this condition, he should be resident. Why you think that he is non-resident? So the logical reason is, did he use Indian resources for that year? No. He was in India for only 60 days or 62 days. Then he went to employment to UK. He did not actually use Indian resources. He got a job in UK and he went to UK permanently. He actually did not use resources of India. That's the logic again. But as per rule, he is resident. Mr. Abhay and Ms. Dipanjali, I think you're wrong. Because the rule says you were in India for 60 days. Yes, because he went on 1st June. So April and May total is 61 days. He was in India for 61 days. And previous 4 years, he was completely here. That means approximately 1300, more than 1300 days. So he was in India. He is satisfying the case number 2, and the rule says any one of the following condition. That means he is satisfying the case number 2 and he is a resident. There is no question of being a non-resident. But logically he is not resident, because he actually not majorly used Indian resources. He went to UK and he never came back. Even if he would have come back just casually, just to meet his family, not to using the Indian resources. So logically he is not an Indian resident. That's why an exception was inserted here. In the following cases, this second condition would be of 182 days. Means if you, number one is any Indian citizen leaves India for employment. Who left India on 1st June for the purpose of employment, he should have left at least after 1st of October. Then only he would be a resident in India. Otherwise, he would be a non-resident of India. Only for the employment cases. If he is a casual roaming around person, he comes to India, he goes back to UK again, then comes to India, then living 60 days. He is like using Indian resources. He is a resident in India. Left for the employment, he is a genuine person. Only if he was for 182 days, minimum half of the year in India, then only he will be considered as resident. Any citizen who leaves India as a crew member of Indian ship. Now, this is a very important, very obvious condition. If you are on a ship, आपकी job ही ship पर है, जहाज चलाते हो आप. Now, in that case, it's not in your hands that how many days you will live in India. Suppose your ship was in India by coming going 60 days तो बहुत easily हो जाएंगे. Just think of a situation that your ship is going every day from going every time from India to UK. So maybe every 10 days you are coming to India, going to UK, coming to India, going to UK. Now 60 days is like, even if you are not using Indian resources, you are just roaming around from India to UK, just because of your job on a ship. You would be easily resident and you have to pay Indian income tax. Why? You're not even using Indian resources. You are just a crew member of Indian ship. You are just working on a ship. In that case, you have to be in India for more than 182 days. Then only you will be considered as resident in India. Any other citizen who leaves India as a crew member of a foreign bound ship. So any Indian ship or a foreign ship, if you are leaving India as a crew member, you have to be in India for 182 days to become a resident. Otherwise, you will be non-resident. Now, in following cases, condition 2.1, which one is 2.1? This 60 days condition I am talking about will be 120 days. Any Indian citizen who is visiting India and earning more than 15 lakh of Indian income. So if you are earning more than 15 lakh of Indian income and visiting India for any purpose, and you are an Indian, then you have to be in India for minimum 120 days to become a resident, not 60 days. So these are the basic conditions to make you resident. If you are living these days in India, you will be a resident of India and you have to pay Indian income tax. Otherwise, no need to pay. I hope this is clear to you all. Any doubt, please let me know now. Otherwise, I'll move to next slide and next topic. that you are clear about resident, deemed resident. Who is the deemed resident? So one is resident. So whoever satisfied these conditions will be resident. So these are the basic conditions. If you are doing this, living in India for this number of days, you will be resident. And if you are an Indian citizen having more than a 15 lakh of income and you are not paying tax in any country, तो भाई कहीं टैक्स नहीं दे रहे ना तो यहाँ दे दो. If you are not paying any income tax in any country, you have to pay Indian income tax. We will deem you as resident. Even if you are not living even for one day in India, but you are having an Indian passport, you are an Indian citizen, Indian voter ID you have, in that case, if your income is more than, Indian income is more than 15 lakh and you are not paying tax in any country, in that case, you have to pay income tax in India. What is Indian income? Any income which is accrued in India, deemed accrued in India, or received in India. That is what accrued income. And definitely it will not include accrued and received outside India. Your foreign income will not be taxed. Only Indian income, which is having more than 15 lakh in total, that is the case, you have to pay Indian income tax. That means you will be deemed to be resident. Now, ordinary resident and not ordinary resident. See, there are two type of cases now. What we have understood, you are resident if you are satisfying these conditions. You are not resident. You are non-resident if you do not satisfy any of these conditions. So two things are clear, non-resident and resident. If you satisfy these conditions, you are resident. If you don't satisfy any of these conditions, you are non-resident. Now, who is ordinary and not ordinary? So any resident who satisfies some more conditions would be ordinary resident. Otherwise, not ordinary resident. So who is ordinary resident? If in previous 10 years, you were resident for minimum 2 years. So you are a resident and in previous 10 years, you are minimum 2 years resident. Then you are an ordinary resident. तुम नॉर्मली इंडिया में ही रहते हो, पिछले साल भी इंडिया में थे, 10 में से 2 सालों में भी इंडिया में थे, मतलब तुम इंडियन हो, मतलब इंडियन इनकम टैक्स देना पड़ेगा. So if you are in India for minimum 2 years in last 10 years, then you are a resident, that is ordinary. And in the previous 7 years, you were in India for minimum 730 days. So you were in India for minimum 2 years in last 10 years and minimum 730 days in last 7 years. Then you will be ordinary resident. So you have to satisfy both the conditions. In 10 years, minimum 2-year resident. In 7 years, minimum 730 days in India. Then you are ordinary resident. Otherwise, you are not ordinary resident. So first we have to see the person is a resident or non-resident. If resident, then we have to see ordinary resident or not ordinary resident. So this is what about complete residential status of an individual. I hope everything is clear to you all. Great. So let us move forward. Residential status of HUF, firm and AOP. So अभी तक हमने पढ़ा about residential status of individual. Now we will talk about HUF, firm and AOP. तो भाई जहां रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाओगे ना, जहां तुम्हारा हेड ऑफिस होगा, उसके हिसाब से डिसाइड होगा कि आप रेजिडेंट हो या नॉन रेजिडेंट. बिकॉज हम ये तो कह सकते हैं कि मैं इंडिया में था या नहीं था, बट हम ये नहीं कह सकते ये फर्म है ना कुछ दिन तो इंडिया में रही, फिर हमने क्या किया, फर्म को बाहर भेज दिया. हाउ कैन यू सेंड अ फर्म आउटसाइड इंडिया? ही कैन नॉट ट्रेवल. Have you ever seen in a flight who is beside you? Oh, if a firm was sitting with me, a firm was sitting with you, an AOP was sitting with you in the flight, an HUF was sitting with you in flight. No, it's not possible. Only an individual can sit in the flight and go outside India. That's why these all above conditions apply only on individual. What about firm and HUF and AOP? If control and management is in India, if control and management is in India, that firm, company, AOP or HUF is understood or considered to be a resident. Again, not even head office, not even controlling office, nothing, simple. इस फर्म को मैनेज करने वाले लोग कहाँ हैं? इंडिया में है तो इंडियन है, फॉरेन में है तो फॉरेनर है. Simple. Control and management is not wholly outside India. See, very clear. Wholly outside India nahi hai. Even if one manager is sitting in India, your control and management is not wholly outside India. That means you are a resident. Suppose, for example, Apple के सारे managers US में बैठते हैं, but एक India head, the head of Indian operations, is sitting in India. Whether control and management is outside India completely or not? No. Maybe 1% control is in India only, because that Indian head is sitting in India and controlling it. Maybe 1%. It will be a resident in India. Resident. If control and management is wholly outside India, completely outside India, अगर एप्पल का इंडिया में एक भी पर्सन नहीं बैठता, there is no manager, no controlling person sitting in India for Apple, then Apple is a non-resident in India. Only employees are working in India, that doesn't matter. Control and management should be in India. And only in case of HUF, Karta should satisfied above conditions. Do not satisfied, then non-resident, not ordinary resident. So ROR means resident but ordinary resident. RNOR means resident but not ordinary resident. So HUF का कंट्रोल एंड मैनेजमेंट अगर इंडिया में है तब तो वो इंडियन HUF है. लेकिन अगर उसके कर्ता ने ये बाद वाली कंडीशंस 10 years and 7 years वाली conditions, if that karta satisfies these 10-year and 7-year conditions both, then the HUF will be ordinary resident, otherwise not ordinary resident. So control and management should be in India. That is first condition. But if HUF's Karta is satisfying additional conditions, then it is an ordinary resident, otherwise not ordinary resident. Residential. Any Indian company is always resident in India. If you make a company which is incorporated under Indian Companies Act, then the company is always resident in India. Doesn't make any difference whether that Indian company has foreign directors or foreign shareholders. No, the company is always resident in India. And if there is a foreign company whose place of effective management is in India, that is also a resident company. Suppose Apple Inc. Apple Incorporation is a UK based company, but the effective management of that company is sitting in India. So even if that is a foreign company, that will be resident in India because effective management is in India. Otherwise, it will be a non-resident. And place of effective management means key managerial person stays in India or commercial decisions are taken from India. That means place of effective management is in India. So this residential status topic is complete. There are 5-6 minutes left. If there are any doubts, please let me know. Otherwise, we will close the class.